Okay, this presentation is on the strategies of unions in Belgium towards um, organizing food delivery couriers. It's a really work in progress. So I'm using two terms, micro-syndicalism and macro-syndicalism. Micro-syndicalism, this is what the unions, or at least one of the unions, is using for defining how they try to contact the couriers and try to organize them in their day-to-day union work. And on the other hand, you have macro-syndicalism, and this is referring to the more traditional ways, the traditional union strategies of Belgium unions. This is social dialogue, political advocacy, and also litigation actions. It's a qualitative case study still ongoing, using secondary literature, personal communication with the unions, union documentation, grave literature, observing participation in one of the projects of the unions, and also semi-structured expert interviews. The main actors in the Belgian context are, of course, the couriers. What we know about them is that they have a high turnover in their job, and they are very diverse. And if you look at the social composition of them, I think increasingly there are workers with a migrant background, also like in Toronto and Paris, undocumented migrants, and there's the usage of renting. Collective organizations are the two main trade union confederations in Belgium, the Christian one and the socialist one, and those are both strongly embedded in the labor market and the welfare state regime. We have an informal collective, the Couriers Collective. There's also another one, but maybe less important. And they have built informal alliances with the unions. And until 2018, there was also the involvement of the labor market intermediary, or it's called SMART, which acted as an employer towards the couriers, but was also acting as a quasi-union in terms of having or trying to improve the terms and conditions of the couriers towards one of the platforms, Deliveroo. Other actors are, of course, the platforms, and then we have also to look at the wider context and the political opportunity structure. So the study is taking place when there was a more right-wing government, the Michel government, and then the Gros government, which might have a bit more opportunities for the unions, because also the socialist political parties are part of this government. Looking at the regulatory context, and this only applies for most of the countries, this context is applying to them. So what I'm using the CRIMT framework. So at time one, most of the couriers were in a genuine dependent employment status via the so-called SMART arrangement, which is in itself interesting, as it is also an experiment. And this arrangement was restricting the regulatory arbitrage by the platforms. Then at T1, we have some legislative changes. There was the CRO Act of 2016, facilitating the contractor status and paper delivery system in 2017. Then this was replaced by a moonlighting act during a certain period. Then we fall back again to the CRO Act in 2021. And quite recently, there was a package of labor market reforms in February. And this package includes criteria to determine whether food delivery platforms could be considered employers or not. And those criteria will come into force in 1st of January next year. but it's still to be seen whether this will change the situation or not for the careers. At least the platform seems not to be too worried about it, because when there was all this talk and the negotiations within the government, one of the platforms threatened to leave Belgium, but now we don't hear anything about this platform. So this this change and the regulatory context might mean an empty box for the careers. Looking at TET0, then we have first of all a homegrown platform, Take Easy. This went bankrupt in 2016, but it's important because out of this bankruptcy, the careers were already organized in a collective, but this was more about the enjoyment of cycling. But then there was rising awareness among those careers about their precarious conditions, and they also contacted the union. So here you can see the alliance building between this collective and the unions. Deliveroo entered the Belgian market in September 2015. Most of the careers were working with the smart arrangement. So the smart arrangement was offering legal minimum standards and a genuine employment relationship. And most of the careers were students back then within this smart arrangement. And also the unions were at the verge of negotiating a collective agreement with Deliveroo, and the collective was then relying on the union's knowledge and expertise. And then we have also two other platforms. One is Uber Eats, active in Belgium since 2016, and then Take Easy, which is more rooted in the conventional economy and is working with agencies. What we know about the social composition of the careers until 2018-2019, that's as unsurprisingly, they're young men students. Some of them have a migrant background, and back then unionization rates stood at 6% at the beginning of 2018, and there was no outspoken anti-unionism among the careers. Then we have a T1 change in the legal framework because Deliveroo decided to move to contractor status. This was facilitated also by the legislative change by the CRO Act of 2016, which came into force in the year after. And this act is providing some minor regulations for platforms and was aimed to stimulate a collaborative economy or sharing economy, what was called the platform economy at that time. The CRO Act only applies to licensed platforms, and this is decided by the Ministry of Finance. What is important is that the Act introduced a favorable tax regime, so the platform as an employer don't have to pay social security contributions, and also the careers don't have to pay social security contributions. They only have a 10% income tax at a certain ceiling of €5,000. Now this is a bit higher, it's more than 6,000 now. And this act de facto introduced a third status, but without social protection. This act, the CRO Act, was then replaced by a kind of moonlighting regime. It was more or less a similar regime than the CRO Act. Also, that the careers were exempted from social security contributions. Due to this decision to move to contractor status, there was, and the pay by delivery system associated with it, there was mobilization of the careers in the winter of 2017 and 18. The careers could more or less rely on their workplace bargaining power. At least they have some disruptive capacity. And they also have some the discourse of the careers was also important because the unions were surprised by the neutral or even positive press about the claims of the careers. At the same time, the Michel government back then was unwilling to change anything about this, and they were still promoting platform work as micro-entrepreneurship. If you look at the action repertoire of the careers, they were using strikes. They occupied the headquarters of Deliveroo in Brussels. There was a street parade. Also, some restaurants were showing solidarity, and so on. And this was mainly taking place in Brussels. After January 2018, Deliveroo went to the contractor status. There was demobilization of the careers or the protests. But afterwards, there was still some short-lived mobilization and protests in 2019 and later on. How did the unions react? First of all, there was a consensus within the unions that the contractor status was in itself sham self-employment, but it took a while within the unions to see who was responsible or who could organize or represent the careers. What is important is that the unions embarked on micro-syndicalism during the mobilization of the careers, but also later on. Micro-syndicalism is not new, in fact, not so new for the Belgian unions. At least this is taking place in the companies where they have a presence. So at the work floor, it's workplace based. But if you look at the food delivery sector, it's no longer workplace based, of course. It's urban based, and as we have seen, for instance, in the presentation. This morning, also the Belgian unions were not paternalistic, but were more like trying to have context and trying to have context with the careers and trying to understand their situation and listen to them, to their interests and needs. They offered some logistic support and other support towards the careers collective. What is also important is that the initiative came from individual committed full-time officers to support the careers. And the unions have reached out during their mobilization and also later on with, for instance, organizing bike repair, leafletting, small surveys, providing cycling gloves, organizing a day of the career, campaigning on street and on campuses, so platform for informing students. And very recently, this week, they set up a Maison de Career, where in Brussels, in a squad, this is not coincidental, where there's a presence of the unions and where the careers could come for information. Then we have also deliberate experimentation. Less important is that one of the unions has set up a dedicated website for the platform workers, but I don't know to what extent this is successful. But within this context, there's also different platforms set up by the Christian Union, the United Freelancers. The decision to this is already taken in 2015, and it's more aimed at the increase of solo self-employment, either as a main or a secondary job on the Belgian labor market. It took a while before this platform was set up. They learned from other union initiatives in Germany and the Netherlands. And it's a transversal structure for representing and supporting solo self-employment. But of course, this context of the food delivery careers helped this platform to gain some more prominence within the media and also within the union itself. And then there's another experimentation going on that is funded by the European Social Fund and the Flemish government for some time. And the aim is exploring the development of new services for platform workers and also for solo self-employed. And its current focus is on the food delivery careers. It's currently in a test phase, but the developing an app for the couriers and also a web tool, so to monitor their unpaid labor and also to provide them information about their social rights. And then further on, we have this macro syndicalism. This is, in Belgian context, union strategies as we know it. So lobbying the government and litigation actions. So, for instance, this Moonlight scheme was stopped because of litigation actions of the unions. There's also the Brussels Labor Court ruling in 2021 saying that couriers are self-employed, to the surprise of the unions, but now again they are appealing this ruling. And then we have a lot of negotiations going on, or examples of macro-syndicalism related to negotiations, collective bargaining, and social dialogue. One of the most recent one is the historic agreement between the Socialist Transport Union and Uber. And it's mainly focused on the taxi drivers in Brussels, but yeah, within the discourse, it's also aimed at the couriers of Uber Eats. Within the secret agreement, it stated that they agreed to disagree about the employment status of the taxi drivers, but it means also that at least Uber is recognizing the socialist unions and representing the taxi drivers, and it's the start of a social dialogue. And within Belgian context, the other unions were surprised and not amused. Conclusions, as we know from the literature on unionization and servicing and organizing goes together, there's the deliberate experimentation of the United Freelancers, but this is also informed by mapping the needs and issues of the couriers based on micro-syndicalism or the organizing tactics. The unions are also providing services when it comes to income tax issues. If you look at micro-syndicalism, I think here it's important to state that the autonomy of the full-time officials is important, and they have also a limited budget for new initiatives. But of course, this goes together with the responses leadership. And micro-syndicalism is also desirable in the context of a highly transient migrant workforce. Yeah, but so far it's difficult to say if the regulatory field has been improved. It's still to be seen, and then at least now there are also tensions between the unions because of this Uber deal. Yeah, I will leave it.